Hello, and welcome to the Proximity MRP Controller demo, MRP Controller by Javelin Solutions. The Proximity MRP Controller consolidates the typical functions that the end user would carry out on a daily basis. I will enter the transaction code as indicated on your screen. As you can see, it is comprised of three views for order management, material management, and component requirements. The order management view is an advanced stock requirements list that consolidates list displays, mass conversions, releases, availability checks, and many other functions into one workbench. It replaces numerous MRP and shop floor control transactions into one easy-to-use workbench for the MRP controllers. The material management view affords the MRP controller maintenance of the MRP, work scheduling, and forecasting views on the material master. This function provides for field level maintenance to update the material master, and each field for maintenance can be controlled through our custom configuration table. Finally, the component reporting view provides for reporting the current and future requirements of bulk material as well as vendor managed material through your planning horizon. This one-of-a-kind report will give you the information you need to determine future material requirements for material often planned based upon past consumption. So at this point, we will start to get into the transaction to see how they operate. So let's begin back in the order management view. One thing about our MRP controller is that we provide many more fields available to you for doing selection upon planned orders and production orders. Compared to your stock requirements list of MD04 and MD07, you can see that we provide for a number of additional fields that you normally didn't have. Mind you, I'm only showing you about half of the fields that are available. I have configured out all the other ones. You can expand this list or contract the list that you see in front of you for your selections. So let's get started. Let's go into the plant. We'll put in 0001. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to search upon planned orders for procurement. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop down to the purchasing group and put in a value there. I'm going to enter JS1. Additionally, I might want to say that I only want material types ROH, raw material. Now, of course, we can select a few more additional fields that are appropriate for planned orders for procurement. Unlike the other stock requirements list standard SAP, you typically use your plant and MRP controller. With ours, since it's going to do availability checks, it's better to at least select 3 or more different variables. So now I'm going to go ahead and hit the execute button. So as you can see, my entries that I made in the previous screen, the plant, the purchasing group, as well as the material type are now shown above. It's just to ease for the end user to see what it was that they actually selected upon. At this point in time, I can go down my list and see that I have materials in the first column, the descriptions, as well as additional information such as the planned order number and the fourth column. If there are any system statuses, now we don't have any for planned orders, but we would for production. Additionally, you have the exception messages, and not only do you get one exception message, you get both that are active. Typically, you have to get that through double-clicking an MRP element in the stock requirements list. So what I can do here is a number of things. I could certainly look at my exception messages. I could do a filter on my exception messages to say I only want to see 30s, as you see in front of you, or maybe I want to see something a little bit more in-depth, such as a message 05. However, if I had a lot of entries in there, I could actually go back to my stock requirements list, the MRP controller, put in my exception message of 30, and now execute that. And now you'll notice that all my exception messages of 30 are now shown. From this point, I've limited my selection down to the exception message level. Before, you can only capture down to the exception group within standard SAP. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you a nice function. I'm going to go ahead and select a couple of my planned orders, and I'm going to convert all of these to purchase rec, these 3 right here. Upon conversion, you get this message, tells you the planned order that has converted to these purchase orders, purchase requisitions, excuse me. I'll hit the continue, and at this point I will refresh the screen and those will drop out. And I'm now down to, for part number 185, down to planned order 6580. I can essentially use this as a working list. If you're curious as to what goes into the message of 30 and what is the details, say the requirements going along with these replenishments, you simply double click into the material. And now I'm in your standard stock requirements list. Let me hide this overview tree. And now if I want to, I can look down the entire requirements and replenishments list. It is your standard stock requirements list as you're familiar with already. If you notice down at the bottom right, you're now in MD04. Simply click back, and now you're back into the proximity MRP controller. Now let's try something different. Let's go ahead and click back and say we want to look at our production parts as opposed to our procurement parts. So what I'm going to do is put in an MRP controller, MDP. Mind you, I have to remove my procurement information. I'll take out the exception message. Now maybe I want to look at maybe exception message 20s. So for my MRP controller, I'm looking for 20s. And 20s are those that say you should cancel your process. So let me just go ahead and look for these three input variables and execute. Now it's going to take a little bit longer because as you notice in the bottom left hand side I had a bunch of different checks that were going on, and we're doing a real-time material availability check and a capacity check. So again, what I was doing was searching on these 20s, and you can notice all my list here, down the list, these are all the production orders. Let's say I should cancel the process. At this point in time, I could certainly double click into a material, say material 109, go look at the stock requirements list, and you'll notice I don't have any requirements, but I have 2 production orders. Here's an example of where if it's in a created status, I may go ahead and delete it, or TECO. And in the ones that's being processed, I'll let it go to completion. So I can continue to do some maintenance here. For example, even though these are to be canceled processes, I could go ahead and do a release on the created statuses. So if I do release order, it will go ahead and do the release. And when it's finished, I'll get a message, and I'll confirm that message and then go ahead and refresh. Now one thing you also notice is that I also have a bunch of other options here. I can convert a planned order to production order. I could do a material availability check. I could print my orders. I can create notes. And I could do WM staging. So during the release process, I get these messages that come back. Start capacity availability check. No material components exist. There's a serial number check for an assignment, and then the order is released. So these messages are being returned from the standard release process that you have configured for your production orders. We're just providing you those messages. Another interesting thing to note is I can see that I have notes indicated here. I could simply double click and go into that message and see what I have. When it comes up, it'll be a note that you'll see on your production order. This one was released early. Confirm my message. I could double click on an empty box and create a message there, or simply go ahead and select a couple of these and then hit the create notes, and I'll be able to create the same note for all the orders selected. There is a lot of information in this one transaction. I could continue for quite a bit of time. I think you get the idea that I can now do some WM staging on released orders if they're WM relevant components. And as I scroll, you can see that I have additional messages. If I had TRs or TOs, they would show up in this list. I could simply double click on a TR or a TO and go drill into that and see the materials assigned to that TR and TO. So let's move on back. Let's go now to the materials management. So what I'm going to do at this point, I'm going to go ahead and put in my material number. Which, say for example, material 181 had a lot sizing procedure that I wanted to change. So I put in its part number, put in the plant. One thing you notice is I've got the MRP view, the work scheduling view, but I do not have the forecasting view. That has been configured out of this view. So if your business doesn't allow the MRP controller to maintain the forecasting view, you simply hide it. Now I'm going to go ahead and just make a change in my MRP view. I will now hit the execute. Now you notice all these fields, I have some that are hidden where you see empty spaces. I also have some that are display, which are unchangeable, and then I have others that are ready for input. So what I indicate is I'm going to go ahead and change the lot size from fixed lot size FX to lot for lot. And I'll go ahead and remove this fixed lot size of 1, and maybe I want a minimum lot size of, say, something like 5 to 10. Now for things we make in-house from a fabrication level, maybe that's a little bit more likely of a scenario. For a final assembly, maybe not. This just gives you an example. So let me go ahead and hit the execute. It tells me that it's been created and or extended. I'll confirm that and I come back to my MRP Controller Materials Management view. Now to show you that we actually execute that in the background, I will now switch to another view, which is the Display Material Master MM03. I'll enter my material 181, switch over to the MRP1 view, hit the green check mark, confirm that I want that plant and storage location, and now you can go in there and you see that I have indeed changed it to EX 5 and 10. To just double check, we can go into our display changes, and you can see on May 13th I had made a change using an MM02 BAPI. Click on the display and you now notice the old values compared to my now new values. So we're just leveraging standard SAP. So now let's go back to the Proximity MRP controller and look at the last view, the component requirements list. The nice thing about this is bulk material and vendor advantage material typically are information that you don't see replenishments on. Now, depending on your business, you may want to know if that type of material is either trending upwards in requirements or trending downward in requirements. So you can adjust quantities with your supplier. Many times you determine these types of materials based upon a forecast of materials, which is using past consumption. But why use past consumption when you can actually see the real requirements? So from this point, I'm going to say I want to go look at bulk materials. I'm just going to leave it for this plant. I'm going to go ahead and take out this MRP controller. And I think that's what I'm going to just leave right there right now. Let me go ahead and hit execute, see what we get. So you notice I have this material 186 rivets on this production order, and it goes down here, and now I see planned orders. So typically this is information that you would find on the planned order and production order, but it doesn't drive your demand in your system. And the nice thing about having that information is that I can now see and project forward my demand into the future. So if I only cared about this one material, and I wanted to say, let me sort on my requirement state, now you can see it going out into the future. And now I can now go ahead and at this point see that I have quantities on a given day, and when I export this, I can now get a chart and see how this all looks. I can export this as a typical ALV list display. At this time, I think that has given you a good overview of the Proximity MRP controller. If you have any questions, please reach out to us on our website at www.javelinsolutions.com. That's javelinsolutions.com, 2 L's. Thank you.